Great. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome. You are with the Center for Cooperative Media at Montclair State University for today's press briefing. We are honored to welcome Governor Phil Murphy with us today. This briefing is part of a series of events that we host at the center to try to provide better access to newsmakers for ethnic and community media across the state of New Jersey. It's one of the many programs that the center runs as part of its New Jersey News Commons project. We work with more than 300 media partners across the state, including dozens and dozens of ethnic and community media outlets. Today's briefing, we will be asking the governor 5 questions, and those questions came from our current fellows, our COVID-19 fellows, where we are supporting, how many fellows to write about COVID and the pandemic from our ethnic media community. So those 5 reporters will ask those questions, and the governor will not be taking other questions. But if there's anything else you want to follow up, and you can drop it in the chat, and we're more than happy to try to get it to his press office. So with that, I'll hand it over to Oni Advincula, who will introduce the governor.
Thank you, Stephanie. And oops, am I muted?
You're good. You're good.
You're good.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you, Stephanie. And thank you, Governor Phil Murphy. My name is Oni Advincula. I am the project coordinator for Ethnic Media Initiative at the Center for Cooperative Media. It is truly an honor to be with you today, and we sincerely appreciate your time and support. Without further introductions, let's all welcome our very special guest today, New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy.
Thank you, Oni, and thank you, Stephanie, and thank you to Montclair Center for Cooperative Media for organizing this roundtable and giving me the opportunity to engage with members of the media who represent the diversity of our state. Our administration understands that New Jersey's diversity is our greatest strength. It enriches every facet of our lives, from our kids' exposure to different cultures and languages and every kind of cuisine, to the entrepreneurship of the immigrant community, strengthening New Jersey's economy. Recently, our administration established a wealth disparity task force. We enacted a legislative package to bring greater diversity to the ranks of the law enforcement community. And we just created the Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging, led by Janae Johnson. The Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging aims to dismantle inequity within state government based on race and ethnicity, among other things, to expand opportunities for communities of color and other underserved New Jerseyans. The Wealth Disparity Task Force, which I mentioned a minute ago, was established to address the various causes and effects of wealth disparity in New Jersey. By working to achieve inclusion of groups and individuals who have previously been marginalized, the task force will create comprehensive strategies and solutions to ensure that all New Jerseyans can share in our state's success. Our recent law enforcement legislative package was focused on bringing greater diversity to the ranks of law enforcement, from improved hiring and recruitment practices to creating mentorship opportunities. I really look forward to hearing your questions and discussing our administration's commitment to making New Jersey stronger and fairer for everyone who calls the state home. And again, I want to thank the Center for Cooperative Media at Montclair State University. And with that, Oni, back over to you.
Thank you, Governor Murphy, for your opening remarks. That was wonderful. We appreciate you. We will now hear from reporters from ethnic and community media in the state. In the interest of time, we have prepared 5 questions for you, Mr. Governor. And our first question comes from Clyde Hughes, a reporter for New Jersey Front Runner. Clyde?
Governor, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Good afternoon, Clyde.
Good afternoon. My name is Clyde Hughes. I'm the editor of FrontRunnerNewJersey.com. We cover the African American and Latino communities in South Jersey. My question for you is, longstanding racial and ethnic disparities, especially among Blacks, Latinos, and other immigrant communities, are not new to New Jersey. However, the pandemic has exacerbated many of those inequities. Where where do you plan to focus your budget priorities in addressing these disparities?
Yeah, it's a good question, Clyde, and you got it exactly right. The pandemic did not create the inequities, but it's laid them bare. You name it, public health, job opportunities, housing, education, you name it. And as we recover, and we are recovering, it's going to be very important to not just get back to where we were when this thing started, but to take the state to a place it's never been before. And we're digging out, particularly in the context of your question, we're in year, I think, 402 since slavery came to North American shores. We're decades through the debris and impacted lives from the war on drugs. So it's not going to be one, it won't be overnight, and it won't be one item. It'll be a series of a lot of steps. It'll be our second chance agenda, which we're well into, which is allowing folks on probation or parole to vote. It's expungements now of low-end drug offenses, bordering now on 400,000. It's investments in education in all communities at a record level. It's investment in more affordable housing, which has been a hallmark of our budget. That wealth task force is an example of the scale of the challenge here. And this is a fact as of today in our state. A white family net worth on average is about 300 and something thousand. An African-American families is 6,000 and something. A Latino families is 7,000 and something. So finding ways to doggedly reduce those gaps, both with money and with programs and policy, has been a front and center priority from day one for us, and it will continue to. Oni, back to you. Is that right? You're on mute here, I think.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Thank you, Clyde, and thank you, Mr. Governor. The second question will be asked by Clivel Marcano, editor of Report to Hispano. Clivel, I'm handing over to you the microphone now.
Hi, Governor. How are you?
Good, Clivel. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you again. There are an estimated 425,000 undocumented immigrants in New Jersey. But most undocumented immigrants have been excluded from federal aid, especially during this pandemic. What are your plans to ensure that these hardworking immigrants, most of whom pay taxes, will find a path to public benefit? What is your position on immigration reform?
Yeah, another great question. So, Clivel, in I think probably 4 or 5 months ago, we were able to put a package of $40 million together to go to persons who were previously excluded from any other federal COVID support. And that was largely, not entirely, but largely undocumented brothers and sisters. And may I add that New Jersey is the most diverse state in America, and we welcome and always have welcomed and always will welcome immigrants into our nation and into our state. Rather, as we speak, there are Afghan refugees in the state at Joint Base McGuire-Dix Lakehurst, most of whom won't end up staying in New Jersey, but we raised our hand. These folks served alongside us, and we said it's the least we can do to help them, even if it's passing through, to get their life stable and safe again. So that 40 million is an important first step. I'm committed to working to find more resources. And I would hope that in the legislative session after the upcoming election, that there can be action taken at the state level that can grow that number. And I look forward to working with the legislators to do just that. I'm proud of the step we took, but we need to do more, and God willing, we will.
Thank you for your response, Mr. Governor, and thank you, Clivel, for that question. We're now moving on to our third question. This comes from April Xu, a reporter for the Chinese language Xingtao Daily. April?
Hi, Governor. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, April. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. So my question is about mental health and poverty. So Black, Hispanics, and immigrants who are living below the poverty line are more likely than white adults to report persistent symptoms of serious psychological distress, most particularly in the time of pandemic. So my question is, what can you do to reduce some of these barriers to proper mental health care for immigrants and the people of color? Thank you.
Cool. Again, these are great questions, and there's no question that the mental health strains are felt the most and are at a very high level, one, due to the pandemic, and two, as you rightfully point out in your question, overwhelmingly in communities of color and immigrant communities. So there are a number of different resources that the state has. What I think I'll do is, because I don't have the phone numbers or websites memorized, I'll ask my colleagues to get back to you, April, and to the whole group with places to go, with phone numbers and websites for folks to be able to go to, all of which are confidential, all of which are free of charge. And I think you make a very fair point. We ought to be thinking even more broadly about getting that information to communities where we know that we're suffering due to a disproportionate amount of mental health strain. But we have a lot of programs. We do a bunch of them on our own, and we partner on others. And it's exactly the timing. It could not be more important than right now. But I'll make sure we get that information out to everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Governor. We are looking forward to that. Now, let's ask Philip Han, editor of Korean language business newspaper, Midju News, to ask the fourth question.
Hi, nice to meeting you, Governor.
Hi, Philip. I love your name.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have a question. Despite the extensive federal and the state laws that guard against discrimination when buying or renting, complaints about housing discrimination based on immigration status, national origin, or race have occurred for years in New Jersey. What are your plans to address this housing discrimination and segregation against immigrants and people of color?
Yeah, again, these are great questions. This is another one where we're going to get you a phone number and a website to go to report any incidents like that, because that's all that you just described, Philip, is against the law. It's either against state law, federal law, or both. So we'll get you that. In fact, I was incredibly proud on Juneteenth of this year to sign a so-called ban the box housing policy, the most progressive of its kind in the nation, which disproportionately impacts communities of color and persons of color, because it was the question that asked about any criminal record, and that's no longer allowed. And I stood with a guy who is a superstar who made a mistake when he was young, but has long ago repented and paid the price, yet he was being held back from an ability to get a safe roof over his head for him and his family. Those days are now over. It's the law. You can't do that. And so I think the big part of my answer is our job is to enforce the law. It's one thing to have the right laws on the books, and in this case we do, but it's another to make sure they're equally enforced up and down the state. Again, Philip, we'll get you information, whether it's a website or a phone number or both, for folks to report that, and for us to have the information we need to take landlords who are unscrupulous to task. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Governor.
Thank you, Mr. Governor, and thank you, Philip, for that question. Our last question, but certainly not the least, comes from Ola Slavish, reporter for a Polish language daily, Nowy Dziennik. Ola, your turn.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Is it Ola?
Yeah, it's Ola or Alexandra. I write for Nowy Dziennik, which is a Polish language weekly published out of New Jersey. My Question is, New Jersey has nearly 150 ethnic and community media outlets serving immigrants and people of color. State and local governments in New York City and California have committed a substantial portion of their advertising and marketing budgets to advertising in ethnic and community media. We reach the audiences which, due to the language and cultural barrier, are hard to reach for your administration. Will you commit to doing the same thing in New Jersey?
That's a good question. These are all good questions. I wouldn't necessarily commit, but it's something I would absolutely consider. We do some of this already, whether it's in my government life or in my political life as I'm running for re-election. We go into a lot of local organs, such as the ones that you all represent on this call, and do that with some regularity. But I would be very much open to doing that. It's a smart way to get to people, and frankly, in a more targeted, closer to the ground way than the big other media players, whether they be print, radio, or television, or digital. But I like the concept, and I would be very much open to it. I've got one of our senior folks in our communications team with me, and I promise you, she and I will take that up after this call with our colleagues. Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Murphy. I believe that was one of the most important questions for ethnic media, to be part of that advertising budget. Same thing would happen in New York and California. For all the questions in the chat box, we will send it to the governor's office right after this event, and we look forward to the governor's response. Governor Murphy, we cannot express enough how grateful and appreciative we are for your time, for Aliana, and for your staff for giving us this opportunity to speak with you today. This means a lot to us, and we hope that we will have another press briefing with you in the near future. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. This briefing is now adjourned.
Thank you, Oni, and thanks to everyone, including Montclair State. Take care.